All right, hi, this is Anakin, and welcome to another Railway Empire video. This is our first shot at the second scenario in the new Crossing the Andes DLC called Coffee Barons. And we're going to start in Sao Paulo with $1 million, and this time we're going to be the gangster. So the gangster, strong freight, some auctioneers at the beginning of the game, and basically pays a penalty for passenger and mail freight. It gets a 15% penalty there and doesn't get any office people to apply. So this first task is really hard. We have to connect 8 rural stations in a year. And of course, to stay on our time, we really need to do it in 6 months. So we're going to do it in about 5 or 6 days. And let me show you how. Of course, everything has to be connected to our headquarters, which is Sao Paulo.
I have enough friends in politics with an open ear for my needs.
So we're going to go out and get the cattle for sure, because we've got a meat industry in Sao Paulo. But you'll notice we're going to hook it up with a single line. We're not going to run any trains. We're not going to do anything except say, okay, there's one thing connected. And that's the process we're going to follow. We're looking here too to see, he just said something about the research. Actually, there are research facilities along the coast. Some of the towns have research facilities for their special building. And what happens is you bring them coffee, and every time you bring 3 coffee, you get 3 research points for it. So that's actually how you do your research on this scenario, is by taking coffee to those particular towns where a research facility exists. But at any rate, now we're going back to our plan here, which is really literally to hook these stations up without doing anything else, so that we can get that very difficult task out of the way. And if someone watching has a better way to do this, maybe a way that you can build a strong economy and still get this done in 6 months, please let me know. I'd love to know how you did it. But again, we're going to just go out here and grab the closest stations to us, the closest rural stations we can build, and connect them into our line so that they have eventually a connection to Sao Paulo, and that's how you get credit for being connected. So let's speed this up a little bit until we get through this. So now we're setting up our 8th connection. And there we go. We've completed our task. Took us 8 days. I was a little slow. It took us 8 days to get done. So we finished on the end of the 8th, 9th, and now it's, as you see, it's moving right along here. So we waited until we got our next assignment. Now we have to take coffee to a city that's down in the south, and it's a long way down there. So what I decided to do here is, kind of keeping with the theme of let's get the job done, we're going to go out now and demolish all the connections that we made for the most part. We'll keep some critical ones we want to use right off the bat, but anything we don't need right away, we're going to delete the track and get refunds, delete the stations and get refunds, and gather up enough capital so that we can get the job done again. So we're basically kind of starting over. They gave us that really strange, hard task. And it's not strange to connect 8 stations, but to do it in the same year that you started, that's tough. So there we go. We got that done. And now you can see we started with $1 million. Now we've still got 900,000 after all those deletions. And we've got a station in our capital, our home city, and we're ready to go out now. And we've looked for the closest coffee we can get to Port Alegre, I think it's called. And we're going to run a line down here, and this is difficult land. I'm checking it out over here, and you can see there's lots of mountains. So what I decided to do is go over here and run down the coast. So we'll have to do one climb. We're going to run as best we can kind of along the rim of these elevation changes. So we're going to go where the elevation change is not too drastic, right through there. Anytime you see those grid lines and they're wide apart, that means the elevation changes are not drastic. And of course, when they're really close together, those are rapid changes. So what we're doing here is kind of running along the ridge so we don't get big changes in elevation. But eventually, we're going to have to drop down to where our city is, Port Alegre, Port Alegre, and hook up with it. So we're going to have an elevation change there for sure. But we're going to try to get this down so it's not grossly expensive. You can see it's down to 250,000, and we're going to play with it a little bit and get it down a little bit closer. But you can see how we're kind of running along the elevation changes and just looking for what's the best path to get us there without any terrible elevation changes or inclinations that our trains are going to have to deal with. And we're going to double track it down there and have the ability to run. Now we have to do 24 coffee to Port Alegre, and that's 3 loads of 8. So we'll run 3 full trains down there and be done with this task. Now you could at this point, rather than trying to run this whole thing, you could just go out now and take that 900,000, see if you could start an economy and then use the economy to build enough money to get this done. But I decided the easiest way to do this is just go straight for it and go ahead and have, really, this is our system right now, is our little coffee delivery system to Port Alegre. So if we run them on full and we queue up 3 trains, by the time when that third one leaves the station, we will know that we are getting close to finishing. So there's number 2, there's number 3. So now we've got 3 trains running. That'll get us our 24 coffee down there as soon as they finish the run. As soon as that third one finishes its run. So now we're going to go out, borrow some money, and see if we can't get an economy started. So one of the things I decided to do here is be kind of aggressive. I'm going to buy this livestock and try to get into the cattle business and have that as a way to make some money. And I'd originally planned to see how many cities I could run that cattle to, and keep expanding it. And you'll see where I have a slight change of plans a little later on. But at any rate, the idea is if you own that cattle that saw your fattening, you'll make good money on it, and you're going to need, those goods are going to get shipped, but you need those goods in all of your meat cities. And we know we're going to run beer meat, and yes, I do know there's no beer here. It's chicha or chicha is what they're using for the alcohol, the beer equivalent on this map with this DLC, and it's actually made out of corn. So that's something to keep in mind, is we don't need wheat like we usually do. In fact, there's no wheat down here, but there is corn. So our beer, well, I'll just keep calling it beer, but our beer is made out of corn, and so we're needing cattle and corn. And another change, just so while we're out on that topic, fish is the number one thing they need. So they need fish and logs, and they need corn, and they need what I'm calling beer and meat. And what's the 6th one? I think the 6th one's might even be cloth. I'm not sure. But at any rate, we know that we can ship the cattle, so we're going to have our cattle ranch, and we're trying to match up here to make sure that our production at the cattle ranch is at least as high as the production needed in the city. So the idea is we know how much that city would take. That city will take 3.6 a week. And so we want to match our production at the cattle ranch we own to that 3.6 and have it at least meet or exceed, but certainly not be under that amount, because if it's under, we're not going to be shipping as much as we potentially could. And we know we want to build up our freight revenue. That's Don Lorenzo's strength. So we want to ship as much freight as we can. And of course, the more we're shipping out of that cattle ranch, the more profit the cattle ranch is making for us, which will help fund other efforts that we have to do. So right now our focus is, of course, just build that up and get cattle going. We've still got our 3 trains running down there with the coffee, but that's a long, long run. Not very profitable just because of the time it takes. This line here is much more reasonable distance and will make good money. Because, of course, with freight, you get paid the same amount whether you ship it 1,000 miles or 100 miles. So you want your sweet spots, the shortest line you can find that has high demand, and meat and on this map, corn will be the 2 items that we'll want to ship like that. And you can see we don't have a lot of money right now. And again, that's because rather than taking our million plus our bonds, so $1.5 million, $1.6 million, whatever we could have gotten, and trying to establish a footprint in an economy like doing rapid expansion or getting some city-to-city lines going or whatever, we opted to get that super hard task out of the way, that first one, and to continue along that vein and get that second one done very, very quickly too. Remember, it's just March of our first year, so we're in our 2.5 months into the game now, and we're just now looking at adding cities. But one of the problems is, of course, now that we have connected Port Alegre, we have to have it connected. That line somehow has to hook into our overall network and lead back all the way to Sao Paulo, or we can't build another city. So once you expand to one city, you've got to have everything connected before you can move on to another city. So there we see we've already gotten 1 shipment of coffee. Second one should be on its way. And again, we don't have a ton of money. But we're making $3,000 a week from our cattle ranch, even just at level 1. That's, that's like 150 grand a year of profit that we can make from our cattle ranch. That's excellent. So we're looking to see where's the low-hanging fruit, where's something else that we can get and start running the freight. So I'm looking to see, is there something else I could purchase? Would love to own the coffee. And in fact, by the way, just as a comment, if I ever play this one again, one of the things I will do is go for that coffee right away, since they tell you that that's how you get research points, and you're going to have a steady demand for it. You keep getting that demand of coffee in some of those port cities. There's multiple ones that demand it. If you could own the coffee plantations and keep pumping them up, leveling them up, and keep getting paid for the coffee itself, getting paid for the shipping, getting research points out the end of it, plus growing those port cities, because that's a big part of their demand, then that's a great thing. So I think one thing I would do, a quick critique here, we're only in May, but I'm already saying one of the things I would have done differently is go after that coffee more aggressively. But you don't know when you first play this, unless you've done a spoiler, you don't know if that's the way it's going to work. So 2020 hindsight there, I think. So we saw that there is a research facility there in that city right next to our coffee, and that would certainly be a more profitable run than running coffee all the way down through there. Now, I have noticed on this map, I have a harder time spotting my trains. I don't know if they've got more shadows on this map. I guess there's a lot of mountains or whatever, but when I'm up like this, it's hard for me to see the train. There's one. We're down there at the bottom. There he goes. That should be our third one, I think.
See?
Yeah, there we go.
There is a
So now
solution to each
we've
problem.
completed that task, and what are we going to do?
Really important.
We're going to take down this infrastructure because that line is so long, it's not really profitable. Now, later on when you have money and you could really build it up and pump a bunch of things into it, yeah, it could be great. But right now, you don't have much money. We need to get something closer to home, and we need to get some of those sweetheart short freight lines that are going to really give us good profit using Don Lorenzo. So there, now we've got another, now you see we're in July 3rd. We've finished 2 of our tasks, and we're right back to within $40,000 of the money we had to start. So we kind of knocked off those tasks very, very quickly, year and a half early, and for the second one. And now we're going to see if we can't buy. There we go. There I punched in and bought the coffee plantation. A little bit pricey, but not awful. And now we can hook it up in a nice short profitable run to this oh, I can't see, so I don't know my geography well enough to know these by heart. Curitiba. So Curitiba is a nice short run from that coffee. We used the money we got back from all that tearing down our infrastructure to buy the coffee plantation, and now we can make money both by shipping coffee into Curitiba, helping Curitiba grow, gathering research points, and making money because we own the coffee plantation in the first place. So now we've got a nice little money maker going for us with a very profitable short line. We'll have steady demand throughout the game in Curitiba for coffee, and we'll try to match up our demand, our supply of coffee to the demand for coffee in Curitiba, and that's going to give us a really nice little profitable gig going here. You see $4,000 a week we make off of that level 1 coffee. So we need 400 grand to expand it to match the demand that it has. So you can see there now our tasks are to haul 1,000 freight and to make $1 million in quarterly profit from hauling freight. That's a lot of freight, and we've got to do it fairly quickly. But again, we're way ahead of the curve here on time because we did those first 2 tasks super quickly. So there we go. We hit our 400. We're going to expand our coffee output up to 1.6 a week, and wouldn't even mind doing it again. I actually think I was looking at an incorrect thing, but it's going to cost a lot of money to expand again. And I was actually looking at the research facility, which says it takes every 3 coffee gives you 3 research points. I'm not, to be honest with you, I couldn't swear to you what the true demand is in Curitiba. Hopefully we'll see it before the video is over. Or I could go back and look, I guess. Well, so could you for that matter. So Now, you notice our money is actually rolling in pretty well, but we don't have much, do we? I mean, for a railroad game, we don't have much of a railroad, do we? We don't have any city-to-city lines, and all we have are the auctioneer. Man, I wish I'd. Yeah, would he have helped? Nah, I'm not sure how the auctioneer helps you when you want to buy something. Oh, I know. If your opponent owned, say, an industry in a city and you really wanted it, you wanted that industry because you wanted to knock it down and build something else or whatever, you could use an auctioneer to start an auction on that property. And that way you could actually buy out your opponent because, as you know, up until now, until the auctioneer was introduced, once the opponent sticks an industry in there, you're kind of stuck. You're helping him grow if it's a good industry, and if it's a bad industry, he's taking up a slot that's hurting your city growth. So it's always a bad thing. So an auctioneer is how you could root out an ensconced competitor out of a city. Now, the ones that aren't owned by the competitors, you can obviously make an offer to buy those anytime you want to, anytime you can afford it. So again, we're trying to be careful with our routing here to not make these lines so ridiculously expensive. So we're looking at now setting up our first city-to-city line, because what I was thinking here is the main thing we need right now to build up our freight revenue is we need a market for that meat in Sao Paulo. So Sao Paulo has accumulated a bunch of meat, and our shipments to them of cattle is going to slow down if we can't keep that meat going out of Sao Paulo and going out to other cities. So right now we're searching for a market, and Curitiba is as good a place as any, particularly since we already have a station there. So you can see there's 12 cattle up there, 13 now, ready to go, but our train isn't going anywhere. Now, why is that? That's because our city has no demand right now. So our production in the cattle ranch is actually outpacing our demand in the city now, because the city has maxed out and has its warehouses full and has no place to send its shipments. Now, fortunately, the city itself consumes meat, so there is one consumer for the meat, but it's not enough for us to really make good money. So we're going to, by doing this, create another market for the meat that we're producing in Sao Paulo that we're supplying the cattle for. So, bunch of things there. One is obviously the city line's a great line to have anyway. It's going to be a profitable line. That's the word I was trying to come up with, profitable. And it's going to allow us to ship the chicha, or the beer, from Curitiba to Sao Paulo. It's going to let us ship the meat from Sao Paulo to Curitiba. So it's almost like connecting a rural station, maybe even better, because now I've got two goods that are passing back and forth between the cities. We will carry some passengers and mail as well, because we'll run these as automatic lines and pick up some profit there. We get a reduced rate, but we still make money on it. So we're going to set this up with a city-to-city line. And I'm so used to playing, as a lot of you know, with my dedicated point-to-point lines, I call them. Sometimes I'll build these lines with the double tracks and then just forget to even make the crossovers. You'll see me do that multiple times in this playthrough. But I was a good boy here. I did both ends. And then set our signals. And again, we're cutting the money very, very tight. We're not a lot of money here. When you only start with $1 million and you've got rough terrain and long distances between your cities, and very hard tasks that like those first two that you have to do, it can be tough. Now the exports I do want to have in general, when you get the opportunity to bid on a research, take it, spend some money and buy that research. It's very much worthwhile. That particular one I wanted, even though I'm near broke, because eventually we'll start upgrading our trains, and when we do, that makes it a much less painful process to upgrade your trains when you have that exports technology researched. So now we're just kind of setting up our city-to-city line, and we'll, as money permits, we'll kind of add to that line. And there you go. As soon as we had enough money, we just started another train. You can see we're shipping some chicha and some passengers and mail. We've got meat coming back from Sao Paulo, headed over to Curitiba. So both cities are going to help each other grow, and life is good. So let's just fast forward a little bit until we get to another critical stage. Now you notice we set up some fish delivery because it was right there next to our city-to-city line. That was a no-brainer to grab a short delivery rural station like that that's in demand already and get it going. Now we've set up an interesting little thing here. We're going to try a little pass-through rural station. So let's see, where did I do those? Oh, we'll go back and watch the Viva Mexico DLC videos. The first one, I think I did this, used the technique of pass through a rural station to connect two cities. It's basically a city-to-city connection, but the theory is that they go up, stop in that rural station, and top off if they don't have a full load, and go on to the other end and always have a full load. Now in this particular case, this is coffee, and it isn't going to be needed for a while in either city, so they'll just kind of stop there and have a nice look around and keep moving. And you might think, oh, that's so inefficient, gosh. No, it really, no big deal. They stop and then they keep right on going. And later on, when the cities grow into the ability to consume coffee, or that's one of the things they demand, then you'll have a nice shipment of coffee already ready to go. So I do the pass-through stations here multiple times in this particular playthrough, because we tried them in the Viva Mexico and they worked great. And that delay on a city-to-city line, that quote delay unquote where they stop in that station is almost it's insignificant. So here, getting ready to do another one, and this time going to go from Rio de Janeiro up to this corn, at a train station in where the corn is, and then pass on through that up to a city up to the north. And I'll have to wait till we get up there to see the name of it. I've forgotten the name. It starts with a C and ends with a gin, so core or something or other gin. So we'll see in a minute. But once we can gather up enough money, we'll go on up there and do another pass-through station. This one will absolutely be useful because we're going to be moving corn, and of course Rio de Janeiro has the as I call it, beer down here, and then so does the city up to the north. So a pass-through station going through corn makes perfect sense, because both trains going in either direction will be able to deliver corn to the other city, which will help it to create beer, which in the case of Rio de Janeiro can then be shipped over to, well, it could be, some of it can be consumed and some of it can be shipped over to Sao Paulo. So let's just speed it up again. And I know some of you hate the fast forward. Sorry about that. This is like 5 hours of gameplay, and I just don't want to do 5 hours worth of video voiceovers. I just don't think it's beneficial for you guys to watch such long videos, and it's certainly not beneficial for me to spend all that time making them. So here we are at this city, if I could see it. I can't quite see it, but anyway, here comes our pass-through connection. So let's speed up just a little bit. So I wanted to slow back down and show you how to set up the actual pass-through. Once you get the line going through a kind of a centralized rural station, you just go city, station, rural, city, rural, city, rural, and then you just want to go through and make sure you've got the right station that you're using on your cities. In the case of our there it is, Contagem, and Contagem or Contagem, it's probably Contagem, but we'll call it Contagem. In Contagem, I've only used a small station, so there's only one choice, and we made sure that we picked the one in Rio de Janeiro that wasn't being used for the line with Sao Paulo. So now that's all it takes. You just city, rural, and that way the trains will go back and forth, will carry passengers and mail, and if they're not full, and they often won't be, they will top off with whatever's in that rural station, in this case corn, and take it on to the other city. And you can see there we're starting to pick up research at a pretty good clip. That was pretty fast to earn 300 research points. And that's because of that little deal we've got up there with the coffee in Curitiba, where we're delivering the coffee and getting research points for it and being paid to do so. So now we've got our, again, we're trying to optimize that cattle ranch we own, make as much money out of it as we can, ship as much cattle as we can, and of course we just need to ship freight, period. So we've got another meat manufacturer up there in Uberaba, I think it's called, Uberaba. And so we're going to make sure that we can ship cattle up to Uberaba, and we will look at the demand of Sao Paulo and Uberaba combined in order to figure out how much supply we want to be creating at our cattle ranch. So the critical thing is not so much your trains. You can always have one or two trains too many, and that's not a total sin, a little wasteful, but it's not a sin. But where you really want to do is make sure that you're matching. If you own these things, you want to match your production with the total demand that it's able to reach. And of course, if you don't own anything, like if you didn't own this cattle ranch, the computer owners will match up with the demand as well. And they'll do a fairly good job. But what I find is they're not aggressive enough to suit me, because they're not trying to do objectives the way I am, playing a scenario. So oftentimes I will buy something that I need to help me with a task, and maybe overproduce a little bit just to make things go faster. But the computer will do a pretty good job. Computer owners will do a good job of leveling up that ranch as we create connections to multiple places that demand it and have enough trains running so that we can supply, then the computer owner will level up. You can see our profit has actually dropped a little bit, and that's because, again, we're not shipping the meat off. The cities are getting full of meat in their internal warehouses, and so we can't, ship off as fast as we'd like to. But we're actually going to upgrade again because, again, we're trying to match both cities, and we've just opened up a whole new market up there in Uberaba. And Uberaba, it looks like Uberaba, and then in Uberaba, we will again target getting a market for that meat. So we're going to hook it up with a chicha city or a beer city, like our Contagem, I think it was called Contagem, and that will allow us to pardon me, to create more activity for the meat and then allow us to ship more cattle and make more money. And so now we're just grabbing that bonus. There's a bonus for sugar. We don't need the sugar right now. We will eventually, but we don't need it right now. You see we're making good progress toward our goal of shipping 1,000 units of freight. And we're slowly building up our freight revenue. So let's move ahead. So you can see here we're now setting up that Uberaba to Contagem line so that the meat in Uberaba has a market in Contagem. It gives us a beer meat line, which is great, and allows the beer that's being produced in Contagem to get shipped off so that there will be more corn demand. So now we're going to be shipping more corn into Contagem on our little pass-through deal. We've got our direct city-to-city line here between Contagem and Uberaba, which will be as a nice beer meat line. And again, that's going to help us make more and more money from our cattle ranch because that's going to drive up the demand and allow us to ship more cattle out of that cattle ranch. And you can see now it's up to, what is it, $6,000, over $6,000 a week. So by making that change and creating more demand, we've driven our weekly profit for the cattle from $2,000 to $6,000. So again, the tactic I took here for the most part, other than those two weird things I did at the beginning, the tactic was to try to own these rural businesses and then really drive out the shipments and make sure that I had an infrastructure in place to create demand for the product so that we can make really good profit off of those rural businesses. Now, why rural businesses versus industries? Well, one, the computer opponents leave you alone. They rarely, I'm not sure if I've ever seen one, maybe, but probably not, bid against you on one of these. Like here, okay, now here's where I did the deviation I was talking about. I had originally thought, my original thought was buy that one cattle ranch and then use it to feed at least 3 or 4 cities. So like out here at this, again, I can't, and you'll have to forgive me, I can't, when I'm doing these voiceovers, I can't see the very big screen, so it's hard for me to see this. It's Montes something. So Montes down here is cattle, and there's a city over here on the to the east. I think it's called Porto Segre. I won't even want to guess. But there's a port city over there to the right of our screen that's also meat. So we're going to run a pass-through warehouse between those two to get some cattle going back and forth, as well as some passengers and mail and what have you. And you see our money is racking up pretty well, and we don't have that big an infrastructure going yet. again, it's the power that we're making really good money on our cattle ranch. We're making really good money on our coffee plantation out there near Curitiba. And all that being said, we're, our money is racking up nicely for us. And that's, it just shows you the power of owning these industries, as well as, it's a train game, but it's more than a train game. You really want to get into the industry. So now we're going to set up another station and run a line from Contagem up to this Montes, whatever it is. And that'll be just a basic automatic line. But again, what we're creating is a market for the beer in Contagem and for the meat up in Montes. And that, of course, in the case of the meat in Montes, is also driving up demand for the cattle ranch that we just bought. And I don't think I finished that thought. I was going to have the one go to 3 or 4, but I looked at the price of upgrading the one that I already owned over near Sao Paulo versus the purchase price of a brand new one, and decided it was a better investment to just go out and buy another cattle ranch and then maybe make it a level 1 or level it up maybe to a level 2, just like we did for Sao Paulo, and have the same kind of money coming in and actually spend less money than you would spend if you had to level it up all the way. So that's the idea behind that. So again, let's keep moving here. Now we have our city-to-city line, Contagem to Montes Claros, and we've got our pass-through rural station going through that cattle ranch from Montes Claros to Porto Seguro. So now we should see cattle moving between those two. We should start making money from our cattle ranch up there, and we should see growth in Montes Claros and in Contagem because you got a beer meat line going. And we don't have a beer meat line going yet for Porto Seguro, but give us time. Give us time. We'll work on that. And now we're trying to get another fundamental, which is fish. And we're going to run fish up the coast here. And we're actually running it up the coast actually in anticipation of something down the road. Porto Seguro is another one of those port towns with the research facility, which wants coffee. And the best coffee for us to get is down here to the southeast of where we're looking right now, down there between Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. So eventually we're going to run that coffee up to Porto Seguro, which is going to help our research and help Porto Seguro grow. So in anticipation of that, and while I had enough funds here, and look, again, our money's really starting to look good. Our economy is really strong at this point. We're only 2 years in, and because of those ranches that we own and some good profitable lines, we are starting to make money where we can build at a pretty good clip now. And you have to hit these goals, to ship 1,000 freight and to make $1 million a month in quarterly revenue. You got to ship some freight, and you've got to move. You can't just slowly wait for money to come in. You have got to do something that gets your economy going pretty quickly. And I think we've accomplished that here. The money's coming in nicely. You'll notice it's coming in about as fast as we can build it now. We're not quite at that money doesn't matter anymore point, but it won't be too long. So now we've got a nice little line set up to run fish up to Porto Seguro, and we'll piggyback on that line later on, as I said. And now we want to, and here's our first piggyback on it. We're actually going to treat it like a pass-through, It's going to be a pass-through line through the Fish rural station there between Contagem and Porto Seguro, and that is going to allow us to run really a beer meat line between Contagem and Porto Seguro, and pick up fish whenever the line isn't full. You know, any train that comes through and isn't full will pick up fish in that pass-through station, and now we'll have fish going to both cities, and that will give us some nice profitable trains. There we go. We've already hit our 1,000 units of freight. So the last thing to do is make $1 million in a quarter. The last thing to do, that is, in this first set of tasks. As you know, you can imagine there are a number more to come. These guys, again, hats off to the developers. They do a great job with these scenarios. They're always challenging. They're fun. The maps are great. They do a really good job. And I hope you can tell it. I enjoy playing this game. I really do. In fact, sometimes I am almost, I have to make myself make the videos for you just because I want to go off and play again. So I guess that's a good thing. So here's our pass-through: city, rural station, city, rural station. And to beat a dead horse, the theory is load up with whatever you can get from the city, including any goods that the other city needs. Take off. If you're not full, you're going to stop in the middle, grab whatever's in that rural station, in this case fish. You'll top off with fish, and you'll tend to always be a full train coming into the other station. And that's one of the key tenets to have an efficient money-making system in this game, is to have the full trains pulling into those stations, because those trains, and you'll see we'll get some traffic jams here. I didn't do a great job in this one of managing all my traffic. And if you have traffic jams with half full trains, that really sucks. At least have traffic jams with full trains, so you've got a lot of full trains waiting to come in there and make you a lot of money. So now we've got a pass-through rural station, city-to-city line, as I said, and we're making sure we run enough trains on it, and we're good to go with that. And you know, still, our research points are coming in pretty well. We're getting pretty decent research, and now we're up to the Berkshire, which I think is a really good train. It's worth the investment to replace. So I'm looking at, when can I replace all my trains, even to the point where it's worth debt in order to, oh, this is a good timing, get mass production so all the trains are cheaper. That's good timing on that. So we won that research. Now our trains are cheaper to buy. Now we're going to repay our 2 bonds, open up a bigger bond. Now we've got plenty of money, and we're going to use that money to upgrade all of our trains to the Berkshire, which is faster, has plenty of tractive power. We're not really, this part of the map is pretty cool. I mean, this is, there's a lot of some rivers, and there's some hills, but it's not awful. This is pretty easy, particularly the part we're looking at right now. It's a pretty sweetheart place to look, to build. So let's stop right there. It's getting pretty long. We'll come back in the next one and continue with our first set of tasks. The one that's left, of course, is to hit $1 million in revenue. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.